getting my stuff together, and walked out in the hallway, and he looked at me and he slapped me as hard as he could. The only way you can do it is to feel you have to. You have to. You don't have an option. You have to. Meryl Streep confessed in a rare, candid moment that stunned even Hollywood insiders. Now at 76, the three-time Oscar winner has finally named the 6 actors she absolutely couldn't stand, labeling one a master manipulator and another beyond unbearable. In an industry plagued by politeness, Streep's brutal honesty is a seismic shockwave. Let's see who they are. Kevin Kline. The creative clash between Meryl Streep and Kevin Kline during the making of Sophie's Choice remains one of Hollywood's most carefully veiled conflicts. On screen, their performances, especially the complex dynamic between Sophie Zawistowski and Nathan Landau, felt fluid, deeply felt, and emotionally intimate. Audiences and critics alike were captivated by their chemistry, never suspecting the quiet dissonance behind the scenes. When director Alan J. Pakula cast both actors in his emotionally devastating Holocaust drama, he believed that their shared foundation in classical theater would lead to a natural creative bond. Both were respected stage performers. Streep, a powerhouse of Yale drama discipline, and Kline allotted Shakespearean with a flair for spontaneity. Pakula imagined their shared pedigree would enrich the film's emotional texture. Instead, rehearsals quickly revealed a philosophical rift between two very different types of performer. Streep, known for her methodical and immersive preparation, approached the character of Sophie with forensic detail. She studied Holocaust survivor testimonies, Polish and German dialects, and trauma psychology with scholarly rigor. To inhabit Sophie, a Polish Catholic woman with a harrowing past, Streep believed she needed to construct the character from the ground up. Every movement, glance, and vocal inflection had to reflect the truth of someone who had survived Auschwitz. As production designer George Jenkins later put it, Meryl had constructed Sophie from the ground up. Every accent variation and physical gesture emerged from months of historical research. Kline, by contrast, entered the role of Nathan with far less formal preparation, preferring to discover the character's emotional volatility and charisma through instinct and improvisation. He believed in staying loose, responding to energy in the moment. In rehearsal, Kline would often stray from the script, hoping to unlock fresh emotional beats, while Streep worked to hit precise emotional marks tied to a character she had already mapped out in her head and body. Their conflicting methods made rehearsals tense, not overtly hostile, but filled with an undercurrent of mutual discomfort. The tipping point came when Kline reportedly criticized Streep's intensive accent work, suggesting that her linguistic fidelity risked overshadowing emotional authenticity. He is said to have asked during rehearsal, "Are you sure the audience is going to care more about your Polish vowel sounds than what she's feeling?" To Streep, this was more than a comment about technique. It felt like a fundamental misunderstanding of the importance of cultural and historical specificity. For her, Sophie's voice was a part of her pain, her displacement, and her identity. Kline's dismissal struck a nerve. Though they never argued publicly, insiders say that their on-set relationship became increasingly restrained. Director Pakula often had to navigate their creative divide, staging scenes in ways that allowed both actors to retain their personal process without direct conflict. The result, ironically, was often electric. The tension between Sophie's fragility and Nathan's volatility felt authentic because it mirrored the performer's own sense of dissonance. But the true fracture in their relationship came not during filming, but afterward when Kline described Streep's process as academic in a press interview. Though likely not intended as an insult, the implication that her meticulousness might hinder spontaneity stayed with Streep. To a performer who had poured months into capturing the essence of a Holocaust survivor, This wasn't merely a critique of acting, it was a devaluation of the emotional integrity that such preparation demanded. While the film earned widespread acclaim, Sophie's Choice became one of the most respected dramas of the decade, and Streep's Oscar-winning performance is still considered one of the greatest in cinema. The rift between the two leads never healed. In subsequent industry appearances and award shows, Streep maintained a cool, polite distance from Klein. They have never worked together again. Jeremy Irons. The creative antagonism between Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons stands as one of cinema's most cerebral and quietly intense conflicts, less a matter of open hostility than of deep philosophical incompatibility between two towering figures of the dramatic arts. Both actors emerged from elite theatrical training, respected not only for their range, but for the intellectual weight they brought to their performances. On paper, their collaboration promised artistic fireworks. In practice, however, it revealed the profound and often unbridgeable chasm that can exist between different conceptions of what it means to truly embody a character. Their tension first surfaced during the early stages of a high-stakes period drama, in which both actors were cast in roles requiring deep emotional symbiosis. Producers hoped that their shared classical backgrounds, Streep's time at Yale and Irons at Bristol Old Vic, would foster a mutual language and artistic shorthand. But rehearsals quickly proved otherwise. The very thing meant to unite them, their training, had led them in diametrically opposed directions. Jeremy Irons, long admired for his vocal command and physical restraint, viewed performance as an act of refinement. To him, character was something to be shaped, like a sculpture, beautiful, composed, and tightly controlled. His focus on external craft, voice, posture, diction, was driven by a belief that drama lies in suggestion rather than overt expression. Jeremy treats characters like beautiful objects to be polished and displayed, noted dialect coach Tim Monick, who had worked with both actors. There's grace in his restraint, but also a distance. Streep, by contrast, approached acting as an act of empathy. For her, character was not an object to be shaped, but a person to be uncovered, layer by emotional layer. She immersed herself in research, drawing on historical context, personal memory, psychology, and lived behavior. Each accent, gesture, and facial movement was chosen not to impress, but to reflect truth. She approached characters like archaeological sites, full of buried pain and fragile complexity, requiring excavation, not adornment. Their few joint scenes became quiet battlegrounds between these ideologies. Irons' composed, often aloof delivery clashed with Streep's emotionally grounded naturalism. In rehearsals, when she sought emotional spontaneity, he responded with polished detachment. When she pushed for moments of unguarded intimacy, he defaulted to stylized withdrawal. For Irons, Streep's approach could appear indulgent, an attempt to drag scenes into emotional territory that he felt compromised dramatic integrity. For Streep, Irons' restraint felt like emotional withholding, performance as performance, not as lived experience. Their antagonism deepened when Irons allegedly criticized Streep's accent work, suggesting that her meticulous linguistic detail often felt like showmanship rather than storytelling. He implied that audiences were more likely to admire her technique than connect with her characters emotionally. For Streep, this was not only an insult to her process, but a fundamental misunderstanding of her craft. She believed that technical authenticity was essential to emotional authenticity, not separate from it. An accent was not decoration. It was part of a person's reality, a doorway into their psychology and history. Behind the scenes, their disagreements were not explosive, but brittle. Crew members sensed the chill. Mutual respect never solidified into mutual admiration. They exchanged professional courtesies, but never warmth. Crew members noted how the two avoided each other between takes, how their body language stiffened in shared scenes, and how every moment on screen felt more like a negotiation than a collaboration. What made this creative antagonism especially tragic for film enthusiasts was the unrealized potential. These were not egos clashing for dominance, but artists so ideologically divided in their definitions of truth, vulnerability, and performance that working together became creatively unsustainable. Many hoped their immense talent might lead to more collaborations, films where their contrasting energies could create dynamic tension on screen. Instead, they remained parallel forces, admired individually, but never successfully intertwined. Alec Baldwin. The professional friction between Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin during the filming of It's Complicated offers a revealing glimpse into how even seasoned actors can struggle to find common ground when their creative instincts pull them in fundamentally opposite directions. While the romantic comedy, directed by Nancy Meyers, went on to become a commercial hit and fan favorite, its production was marked by an undercurrent of tension, carefully managed but palpable, between two acting giants whose methods clashed from day one. Meyers, known for her polished scripts and meticulously designed sets, envisioned a sparkling chemistry between Streep and Baldwin that would bring depth and levity to the story of a divorced couple flirting with rekindled romance. On paper, it made perfect sense. Both actors were highly trained, classically respected, and immensely charismatic. Their resumes spanned drama and comedy with equal ease, and both had shown the ability to balance emotional nuance with sharp timing. But as soon as rehearsals began, it became clear that their approaches to comedy, and indeed to acting itself, operated on entirely different premises. Streep, as always, approached the role of Jane Adler with surgical precision. For her, comedy had to be grounded in truth. She dissected the character's psychology, motivations, and emotional arcs with painstaking detail. Every pause, gesture, and inflection was deliberately chosen to reflect not just what would make an audience laugh, but what would feel real to a woman navigating complex emotions about love, regret, and middle-aged identity. Meryl approaches comedy like a surgeon, noted script supervisor Diane Dreyer. Every laugh must emerge organically from character truth. Baldwin, in contrast, brought a much looser energy to the set. A master of timing and physicality, he thrived on spontaneity. His comedic style leaned heavily on instinct and improvisation. Rather than dissecting every beat, he preferred to feel it out in the moment, allowing line readings and gestures to evolve organically during filming. For him, the joy of comedy lay in its unpredictability and in trusting his own instincts to deliver what felt fresh. This methodological divide came to a head in scenes where scripted dialogue was central to Streep's emotional pacing. Baldwin often deviated from the script, altering lines or injecting off-the-cuff remarks without prior discussion. While this energized the set for some cast and crew, it frequently disrupted Streep's carefully built emotional beats. She was forced to recalibrate mid-take, abandoning planned arcs to respond in real time. To an actor like Streep, whose performance structure was built brick by brick through layered rehearsal, this lack of consistency became a serious challenge. Frustration mounted as Streep began requesting additional rehearsal time, not out of insecurity, but out of necessity. Trying to re-anchor her performance amidst the improvisational whirlwind, Baldwin often unleashed. Crew members described an atmosphere of tense politeness, where both actors maintained outward professionalism but made no effort to hide their internal discomfort. Their scenes together required constant recalibration, not just of timing, but of tone and energy. What made the situation particularly disheartening for many observers in the industry was how perfect the pairing seemed on paper. Streep, with her grounded humanity and impeccable comic timing, and Baldwin with his sharp wit and devil-may-care charm, should have created fireworks. Instead, their inability to sync creatively underscored a hard truth in filmmaking. Activity isn't just about talent, it's about compatibility of process. Despite the challenges, both actors delivered strong performances, evidence of their professionalism and commitment to the craft. But insiders agree that their working relationship never thawed into warmth. They performed side by side, not in partnership, but in parallel, each operating from a creative logic the other couldn't fully embrace. Jack Nicholson. The professional antipathy between Meryl Streep and Jack Nicholson represents one of the more quietly enduring divides in modern cinematic history. A clash not born of scandal or personal betrayal, but of fundamental artistic incompatibility. While both are widely regarded as acting titans, their respective philosophies on the craft of performance could not be more different. As a result, any attempt at collaboration between them during the height of their careers was quickly abandoned, replaced instead by a professional Cold War marked by veiled contempt and long-standing avoidance. When early discussions surfaced in the late 1970s and throughout the 1980s about pairing Streep and Nicholson in various high-profile dramas, projects that demanded heavyweight performances, the initial enthusiasm from studios often fizzled once the two actors engaged in preliminary meetings. According to insiders, those meetings exposed a philosophical divide too wide to bridge. Streep, who has long been revered for her rigorous research-based preparation, approached acting as a kind of moral responsibility. She immersed herself in dialects, historical context, psychological studies, and exhaustive character development. For her, authenticity wasn't a bonus, it was the point. Nicholson, by contrast, embodied a radically different view. His performances, while often brilliant, were rooted in instinct, swagger, and the persona he had so carefully cultivated since the early days of 5 Easy Pieces in Chinatown. He didn't become characters in the way Streep did. Rather, he channeled them through his unique blend of cool detachment, sardonic wit, and raw charisma. To Nicholson, acting was about presence, not homework. This difference became more than theoretical during private conversations. Juliet Taylor, a veteran casting director who worked closely with both actors on separate projects, once remarked, "Jack represents everything Meryl considers wrong with modern movie stardom. He's more interested in being Jack Nicholson than disappearing into characters, which violates her fundamental understanding of what serious acting should accomplish." For Streep, who viewed each role as a responsibility to tell someone else's truth, Nicholson's approach felt cavalier, like a betrayal of the very principles she believed defined great acting. The simmering tension occasionally surfaced in public, albeit behind the mask of professional civility. At industry events, their interactions were terse, limited to polite nods or forced compliments. Observers noted an unmistakable chill in their body language, two giants occupying the same space but speaking completely different artistic languages. Their incompatibility became even more apparent in the 1980s and 90s, when both were offered leading roles in several major dramatic films, some of which would go on to earn critical acclaim. While Nicholson remained open to the idea of working with Streep, sources close to those productions revealed that Streep quietly but consistently declined projects that involved Nicholson as a co-star. Directors who admired both talents learned that proposing a Streep-Nicholson pairing was essentially dead on arrival. The final nail in the coffin of any potential collaboration came when Nicholson began publicly mocking method acting in interviews. In one particularly memorable moment, he referred to elaborate preparation as intellectual masturbation that gets in the way of honest emotion. While he never named Streep directly, the subtext was unmistakable. Streep, widely considered the patron saint of meticulous character construction, took those comments personally, interpreting them as a direct attack on her process and her principles. For her, the idea that hard work and emotional truth were mutually exclusive was not only offensive, it was artistically bankrupt. Though the two never engaged in a public feud, their mutual avoidance became an open secret in the industry. Despite occupying the same award ceremonies, film festivals, and charitable gallows over the decades, they remained at arm's length, professionally polite but privately irreconcilable. Their Cold War is not the stuff of tabloid drama, but rather a deeper, more philosophical divide that speaks to the essence of acting itself. Where Streep believes in disappearing into characters and honoring story over stardom, Nicholson has always embraced the power of personal magnetism and instinctual performance. Neither approach is inherently superior, but for these two legends, the difference was enough to fuel decades of silent conflict, making their absence from each other's filmographies one of the most telling omissions in modern cinema. Gwyneth Paltrow. The professional disdain between Meryl Streep and Gwyneth Paltrow stands as one of Hollywood's most quietly telling generational divides. A conflict not of personal scandal or on-set feuding, but of deep, unspoken ideological opposition. After their few public interactions suggested nothing more than polite civility, insiders have long recognized this chilly dynamic as emblematic of larger tensions within the industry: artistic discipline versus celebrity culture, craftsmanship versus convenience, and legacy versus privilege. When Paltrow rose to prominence in the mid-1990s, it was with a potent mix of inherited status, emotional charisma, and impeccable timing. The daughter of actress Blythe Danner and producer-director Bruce Paltrow, she had access to doors that most young performers could only dream of knocking on. To the public, she seemed poised, graceful, and effortlessly captivating. But to Streep, who had spent decades building her career on rigorous preparation, total character immersion, and an almost obsessive commitment to emotional truth, Paltrow's ascension triggered quiet concern and then increasing frustration. What troubled Streep wasn't Paltrow's fame, beauty, or even her connections. It was what those things appeared to replace: the hard, often invisible labor that serious actors invested in their performances. According to one industry insider who had worked with both women, Meryl believes that Gwyneth represents everything wrong with modern movie stardom. She sees someone who reached the top more by circumstance and surface appeal than by depth or devotion to craft. To Streep, acting was sacred work. You earned your place not with buzz or branding, but through preparation, respect for the material and technical skill. That divide became particularly pronounced during awards season in 1999, when Paltrow won the Best Actress Oscar for Shakespeare in Love, a performance that many in the industry found charming but slight. Streep had delivered a far more demanding and technically complex turn in One True Thing that year, and although she was gracious in public, her private response to the outcome was said to be deeply disillusioned. As of the actress recall her referring to the Oscar race that year as a marketing contest dressed as an honor. And though she never publicly named Paltrow, her interviews in the aftermath struck an unmistakable tone. In one such interview, Streep lamented the industry's shift from preparation to popularity, a statement that was widely interpreted as a veiled critique. It wasn't lost on journalists or fellow actors that she pointedly avoided discussing Paltrow in interviews, even when asked directly about younger actresses in the spotlight. Instead, Streep consistently chose to highlight performers like Cate Blanchett, Amy Adams, or Jessica Chastain, women known for their research-intensive chameleonic performances. Her praise often included phrases like technically fearless or immersively committed, qualities she conspicuously never ascribed to Paltrow. The few direct exchanges between the two actresses at awards, shows, and industry events were marked by stiff smiles and brief conversations, On camera, they performed the roles expected of two high-profile women in Hollywood. But those close to them observed an undeniable coolness. While Paltrow continued to enjoy a multifaceted career that included lifestyle ventures and occasional acting, Streep increasingly regarded her as a cautionary symbol, proof of how the industry was drifting away from the seriousness of purpose that had once defined it. To many observers, the tension between the two wasn't merely personal, it was ideological and profoundly generational. Streep, representing the old guard of stage-trained, research-obsessed performers, viewed acting as a vocation grounded in responsibility. Paltrow, emblematic of the rising celebrity industrial complex, moved with ease between screens and red carpets, her image and brand often overshadowing the depth of her roles. The rift remains one of Hollywood's best-kept open secrets, never dramatized, never publicly acknowledged, but felt by those who understand the inner politics of prestige and performance. In an industry increasingly driven by social media metrics and branding power, the Streep-Paltrow dynamic crystallizes a painful truth that technical excellence and artistic integrity do not always triumph, and that the gulf between old-school dedication and new-age celebrity is often too wide to cross. The professional tension between Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman during the filming of Kramer vs. Kramer became one of the most quietly fraught collaborations in Hollywood history. Though the film would go on to win 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Actor for Hoffman, and Best Supporting Actress for Streep, its on-screen brilliance belied a backstage relationship strained by fundamentally incompatible artistic philosophies and clashing temperaments. At the heart of this tension was their radically different approach to the craft of acting. Streep, trained in theater and known for her cerebral, text-driven preparation, approached her role as Joanna Kramer with deep psychological insight and emotional precision. Every gesture, pause, and inflection was intentional. For her, understanding a character meant dissecting motivations, constructing backstory, and choreographing each moment with clarity and control. Hoffman, on the other hand, was steeped in the method acting tradition. A product of the Lee Strasberg school, he immersed himself fully in character, even when cameras weren't rolling. His method often involved pushing the boundaries of realism and spontaneity, frequently blurring the line between performance and lived experience. His improvisational instincts led him to make abrupt, unscripted choices during takes, believing that real emotion could only be captured in the unpredictable. This difference in approach quickly created friction. From the beginning, Streep felt unprepared for the volatile nature of working with Hoffman. She arrived on set expecting mutual trust and communication. Instead, she found herself the target of unannounced improvisations. One infamous example recounted by crew members was a scene in which Hoffman unexpectedly slapped her during a take. The moment was not in the script, nor was it discussed beforehand. For Streep, it was a violation, not just of personal boundaries, but of professional protocol. Cinematographer Nestor Almendros, who observed much of the tension firsthand, offered a vivid metaphor. Meryl operates like a precision instrument. Every gesture and vocal choice serves a specific purpose, while Dustin treats scenes like jazz improvisation that could go anywhere. Their opposing temperaments made cooperation difficult, even as the results on screen proved magnetic. Director Robert Benton often found himself caught in the middle, forced to referee disagreements between his two leads. While Benton praised both actors for their performances, he acknowledged that much of the film's emotional truth came not just from acting, but from actual emotional strain. The divorce drama between Joanna and Ted Kramer felt so real because in many ways it was real. The power struggles, the resentment, the miscommunication, they all existed both in front of and behind the camera. Scenes like, "You just married the wrong person, that's all," and "I tried," weren't just scripted dialogue. They echoed the real disconnection between two artists working side by side, but never truly with each other. The courtroom scenes in particular shimmered with raw authenticity because both actors were drawing from genuine conflict. Streep's restraint clashed with Hoffman's emotional outbursts in a way that mirrored their characters' fraught relationship. Despite their artistic success, the experience left lasting scars. Streep would later describe the collaboration as professionally productive but personally intolerable, noting that while the role of Joanna was important to her growth as an actress, the process of making the film was deeply uncomfortable. She never worked with Hoffman again, and in interviews she's spoken carefully, sometimes guardedly, about that chapter of her career. What do you think about the actors that Meryl Streep hates? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.